either with the client in person, or I would get on the internet with them, and I would just start showing them the whole thing. Here's where your logo goes, here's what this page does, and I would just start walking them through all this. And if you do that, we've already burned up quite a few hours here today, and we haven't hardly even touched on not much of the functionality of what the system does. We've been mainly dealing with a lot of the philosophy of how it flows and works. But once you have that client opened up, so to speak, they'll just tell you everything that they don't like about how their existing systems or processes are not working for them. And then that way, if you understand enough of what the system can do, then you can easily just show them how that you can change that for them.
Sometimes people's problems is not that one thing isn't good. How many systems does each corporation use to do their business? Just in general, what do you think? 2, 3, 4, 6? Where are we at?
I'd say at least 2 is an average. At least 2 is almost a bare minimum.
Okay. As soon as you have 2, okay, 3 or 4, I have my estimator, I have my inventory tracking, I have my accounting, I have my customer, my point of sale system, I have my, and then you're like, oh man, now I gotta mix and blend all these things together. That's a huge pain, huge pain. Okay, I changed subject and it's still along the same wall, same line, okay? Shannon, I'm gonna actually call on you. What do you see here? I've talked with you briefly, just on a personal level. What do you see here, and can you kind of relate some of this stuff right here? Sometimes this is called change.
What do I see, or what do I see with what?
Yeah. Why don't you just explain what you see?
I see a fire.
Okay.
Oil rig offshore.
Okay. So pretty good distance right here, huh?
Yeah.
So say there was no fire, and say I'm trying to imply change. Hey, Johnny, I need you to jump. Sarah, I need you to jump. Tony, please, I'm begging you, please jump. Okay, how many of your friends are gonna jump? Okay, add the fire now. How many friends are gonna jump? Are you gonna even have to ask them? Okay, this is called a burning platform, and it's a two-edged sword. But what do we know about burning platforms and change? So if we have this thing called tradition, and tradition is one of the brick walls that we hit, actually what happens is eventually tradition has to break. It's like the muffin tin. I can no longer fit all my pieces in the darn muffin tin. I had a whole bunch of little containers, but I can't fit everything now. My business model changes. This happens. Some sort of thing needs to happen, okay? So if you have a burning platform, guess what? Adilas has burning platforms. Can I tell you what I did last night? We did surgery on the system last night at midnight before the class because we had a database that was just like millions of hits a day. Bam. And then what we did is we're like, whoa, we didn't know we were going to get that many. Oh, we better do this. Like, that's called a burning platform, okay? Like, it sometimes forces change. And sometimes, if I was on this thing and I saw that, I'll tell you what, I would be jumping myself, okay? No one would even have to ask me. However, that sometimes isn't very fun, but it's called a burning platform. Any comments on that or anything? Sherry O, can I call on you for a sec?
Okay.
Give us a comment about what you've seen possibly either in your current work scenario or what you have done in the past that ended up being sort of like a burning platform that forced the change. Okay, you have multiple locations now.
Yeah.
And you're trying to do all this stuff. And then what do you do?
Well,
Or you want.
we were able to implement multiple locations with inside Adilas. That put out a huge fire because it was more user-friendly as opposed to using some of the other accounting programs. It flowed, where in Peachtree and stuff like that, when owners would purchase stores and not tell me. It would take me a day and a half to create the chart of accounts inside QuickBooks, Peachtree, for that one location. So you guys, that was one huge thing you did. Another little miniature fire you put out most recently, let's say January 31st of 2013,
It's pretty recent.
W-2s were needing to be created and such, and you guys implemented the W-2s and the 1099s inside Atlas. That's huge for people that are looking for that.
So I heard another comment, and Chris, I'm going to ask you to respond on this. You were talking about the cost of an audit, okay? Is that a potential fire or a potential brick wall?
Well, I think just beyond an audit, when you're talking about things that are going to be selling points, is what they call an ROI, or return on investment, is that if you can map out what their current costs are to either implement 5 versions of something, or to have downtime, or to have to buy all these additional licenses, or as we were talking about audits, the difference between a $15,000 audit and an $80,000 audit, simply because you've got appropriate paperwork. Yeah, so, you know, when you talk about things that sell, sometimes that sells to a business owner is, how, you know, am I going to be able to cut down people's overtime? Because they're running around looking things up in a file rather than clicking on a button. The other one I thought of is, you know, when you say something, when you were asking about things, is they said, well, people sit down and they talk about their problems. Not really, because I do a lot of Excel training, and I present things and people are going, wow, you mean I can do that? You mean I don't have to keep doing it the way I've been doing it? A lot of times people don't realize they have a problem until you start going, what are your costs? Do you realize you're running around? Do you realize, you know, all these things? So sometimes, you know, without doing it in a negative way, is pointing out, you know, look at all the ways that we could cut some of those savings that would pay for, or, you know, you'd end up with the extra.
So now this is exciting to me, because now what I'm hoping for from this group of people and beyond is, what are those things? What are those things that they may themselves not realize they're spending $1,000 a month extra, and then it's just silly, and they're not even getting a good product for it. With Atlas, that cost would go away, and they'd have a better product. They don't know until we tell them. How do we? Those are the things I want to know about Atlas. Where are those things that this country just, it's going to be obsolete the way they're doing it when they realize what this is. They may not know, so if I just listen to them, they may not know.
It could be even to the point of like educating yourself on and doing, you know, you see the comparison charts up. This is QuickBooks, this is Peachtree, this is Sage, this is, you know, all of these things that then come in on a list. You know, do you realize that your program only does this, we now do this? Do you realize, you know, this is, because a lot of times you need to have it specifically geared towards, or, you know, again, because you can't talk to them if you don't realize some of the frustrations and things they've been on, you know, looking at.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the Sage that you and I talked about at lunch? Some of the frustrations that you see with Sage?
Well, Sage is, look, it's a very 90s kind of program. You don't have a real friendly user interface. The reams of paperwork you have to do to simply go back. Let's say that you have to put all your invoices in what they call a batch. Then it gets approved and you send it in and it's locked down. So when I sent in a week ago, I now have to fill out 3 sheets of paper to have somebody go back in, open it up, and reassign to the correct account that a check needed to go to. No, tons of time. It was taking us a week literally to put in 20 invoices. That in QuickBooks took us 15 or 20 minutes. QuickBooks does not have the ability that you've got here to attach the receipts and the other kinds of things. It now has on a limited type of basis that you can do. Downside with QuickBooks is that its platform is not really user-friendly as far as being able, and this was what I was asking him, the live update information. You have to export it and then you have to pull it into another program, because the basis that it's programmed on doesn't work with, doesn't communicate with, so you have to bring it out in another format. So lifetime update kind of information.
And that's huge.
Oh yeah,
That's a huge
huge,
thing.
huge. That dynamic data exchange is wonderful, because if you can't do it in this program, the fact you can pull it out into, say, Excel, or talk to a SQL Server database, or talk to something else. When you're talking 3 or 4 different systems, that's huge. That's a huge type. Sage, again, everything, a lot of it has to be, it's very, very constricted, very restrictive. You have to buy modules. And so you want a sales order module, you want an invoicing module, you want a cash management module. You have to buy each of those modules that we're talking about. Then you have to buy users for each of those modules. And it's like $5,000 for 5 users. So costs are exorbitant on some of these, and you can't, when you were talking, that's why I asked about your flexibility. You cannot take, let's say, an expense and link it to a customer. It doesn't have the ability to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, which is huge.
Charging that much money for it?
Oh, yeah. Now, it's supposed to, it's supposed to be the number one out there as far as inventory. But the other is that there may be parts that are open or locked down, or just a lot of problems with it. Just, we're using one from 2009, so I wouldn't think something done in 2009 should be that rough and that adequate. Reason people like Sage, though, pro of it, is that ability to lock it down. Auditors are like, no, once that goes in, I want paperwork. That's why I asked about the audit trail. And I've been through a lot of audits. The auditors, as long as you document and who did what, when, whatever, I've never had an auditor with a problem on it. Does that answer some of your questions then on those?
So you see this story, the ability to tell a story in this system as a huge asset in an audit situation?
Huge asset, but also is underlying all of it. Is it from an accountant or an auditor point of view? Is I could T-account every single one of yours out, boom, 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 boom. Is it, no, it's very, very, as he was describing it, from the rain to the ice to the form. So from an accounting standpoint, there wouldn't be any problem, that it locks right into all those regimented forms. But out here, when you start with the person putting in the information, you're not as restricted. There's more flexibility. There's more, I think we were talking about, I could go to China and access my records. I don't have to know VPNs. I don't have to know how to set up a network. I don't have the expense of a server. I don't have the expense of software downtime. I don't have all of these kinds of things involved in this kind of a product. So.
Yeah, a lot of my companies, we would actually have separate servers just for certain things, because we didn't want to risk that server would go down and affect this thing. So we'd have to buy, just for certain these programs, I have to have a separate server for this. I'm not going to tie it to that.
And then you have to buy, backup electric systems, and you've got to make sure your air conditioning's up to par, and you've got to hire IT staff, and you've got all of these kinds of issues that, hey, that's great if other departments within your business need all of that. But if you're running a business that doesn't, that you're making something else, that you just need an accounting program, yeah, this is, internet-based is really nice.
Yeah, you mentioned something else too. I thought you were saying that the Comcast had gone down.
Right.
Guys. And what I immediately thought of is, well, if that happened, I just grab my cell phone and log in and I'm like working, or grab my iPad.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of clients that run on their iPad and they have 3G or 4G, and if they get phone service, then they don't even care if the internet works.
What I was actually asking in that place is because the company I work for, we actually host, and so there are counties and things that are coming in and using our servers is what they're doing. Yeah. So I was asking about your uptime and the reliability of the servers that you're using, because if your servers go down on this, then it doesn't matter if you have an iPhone, it doesn't matter if you have a cell phone, if I can't get into that. Yeah, because we had Comcast go down a week ago, and we have redundant systems, so a year ago, somebody cut the line going in and out of the valley, the fiber optics line, so we had no internet for a day. So the company went in and backed up with wireless on Digis. Both Comcast and Digis went down at the same time. Yeah, we had a really good day that day. Yeah, so, but very unlikely, but again, it's the reliability of your service. So when you're asking selling points, it's, and they can document what is their uptime, what are their redundant service systems? Do they have, if I can't access it on one, do we have a someplace else if that system goes down? So those would be other things I think a business would look at.
That's a great question.